attorneys really can't say right now what the points are, what the arguments will be before the court in October when she faces her sentence. But the sentencing guidelines do take into account how much money was threatened or demanded in the extortion demand. And because this is such an exorbitant amount of $40 million, that is going to increase the amount of prison time she's facing. Had she demanded something less, the points would have been lower, and she would be facing a lower sentence. Her attorney says 5 years minimum. Now maybe he can convince the judge to go below that.
Wow. All right, Court TV's Beth Karas. Thanks a lot, Beth.
My pleasure.
Let me introduce our guests here. First of all, next to me, criminal attorney Robert Gottlieb, who is famous now for having represented Amy Grossberg, right?
Yes.
And for the crime of having said publicly, my client is not guilty. The judge in Delaware, what do you do? Just throw you off the case?
I'm not going to discuss that, but I
not wanting to get in further trouble, Mr. Gottlieb is not going to discuss it, but let me just say that he has crossed a judge, whether advertently or inadvertently, but that earns him a seat here.
It's my pleasure to be here.
Thanks. Also, a usual fine panel of contributors, Dennis Shea, former advisor to Bob Dole. We also have Jeff Pollack, who is a Democratic pollster, and of course, Judith Adu, an investment banker and attorney. And we have a phone caller, but I want to ask our jury here. These are fine citizens. They're lawyers and so forth, but they have nothing to do with all this. The last thing Beth Karas told us is that even though greed is not against the law, it is going to be a factor in how many years she goes to prison. Does it strike you as fair? And I think I have to go in the order of Dennis first.
Well, it's interesting. The press release put out by Mary Jo White says that the U.S. sentencing guidelines were designed to give judges discretion to create just sentences, when in fact just the opposite. The sentencing guidelines are designed to decrease discretion so that verdicts and sentences are essentially the same. But I have a question. Can I ask Robert a question?
How much are you going to change the subject?
Okay. I just don't understand this case. I mean, look, if Autumn Jackson went and sold the story to the press, that's legal. If she went to Bill Cosby and said, Bill, I need more, or Dad, I need more money, that's legal. But and if she hired a lawyer who went to Bill Cosby's lawyers and said, we'll sue you if you don't, for a variety of reasons, if you don't give us some money, that would have been legal too. I mean, it seems like her biggest mistake was that she didn't have a lawyer.
Well, as a defense attorney, that would be the argument that I would make, but that's really not what this is. What criminal law does and what these statutes try to do is to make sure that people behave themselves within certain limits. There are certain limits beyond which the criminal law says you can't go. So if you go to a lawyer and the lawyer called Cosby's lawyer and said she's entitled to a certain amount of money for support and education and all that, you better do that. Otherwise, we're going to be forced to sue you.
Which would create a lot of bad publicity.
That's right. That's acceptable behavior. In this case, it wasn't that. In this case, they're saying, you better give me $40 million or else I'm going to try to destroy you. She crossed the bounds. She crossed the line of what we would consider to be acceptable behavior.
You know, we have on the phone one of the jurors. David Hinkle was a juror in this Cosby extortion case, found Autumn Jackson guilty today. Mr. Hinkle, thanks for joining us.
Sure.
Tell me something. Did it make any difference at all to you when you were considering Autumn Jackson's alleged crimes that
crime now.
Crime now, right. You removed the alleged, actually. Did it make any difference to you that Cosby's lawyers drew her into it? They sent her a ticket to come in to negotiate. In fact, I think one of the components of the crime was the interstate aspect to it, and Cosby paid for the ticket. Did any of that involvement of Cosby's own lawyer drawing her in these contract negotiations make any difference to the jurors?
No. What we really concentrated on was the timeline before the call to Schmidt on January 16th, where they are discussing the terms of her source agreement with the Globe. We're going back to late December, early January. Jack Schmidt, Cosby's lawyer, did not get any calls directly from Autumn Jackson until the 6th of January. He did not know that those conversations were being taped by Jose Medina, one of the co-defendants here. So the FBI and the fact that they lured them to New York did not come in until after January 16th, when this conspiracy, this extortion, had already been at least 2 weeks old. And we were just looking at the timeline before the actual trip to New York. The fact that they went to New York to collect the money just helped us on the travel charge part of the indictment. The mere fact that they wanted to go, that they were willing to go, and they actually went, doesn't matter how they got there, they still went. It doesn't matter if they were drawn in. They didn't know the FBI was involved. They were well aware of what they were doing because of the fact that Jose Medina had a conversation with Autumn Jackson's mother, and she, told him that what you're doing is wrong and it's extortion. We heard that in court. We took that into consideration, and also the fact that when Autumn Jackson called Jack Schmidt on the 6th, he said it was very clear to Autumn that what you're doing is wrong, it is illegal in 50 states, and it is extortion.
All right, David, if you wouldn't mind hanging on, please.
Sure.
We got to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to ask the juror on the Autumn Jackson case about our question of the day: celebrity trials. Do stars get in jurors' eyes? There was a very big star in the Cosby trial, and we could cite some other cases. Call us, email us. We'll be right back after a break.
Money, power, and influence. The AARP, but what are they really doing for you?
They are simply big business.
NBC Nightly News tonight.
Celebrity trials, do stars get in jurors' eyes? Marcia Clark, for instance, says that is exactly what happened in the O.J. case. Never mind race, anything else. It was all about celebrity. On the phone with us, David Hinkle, who is a juror in the Autumn Jackson case involving that very big star, Bill Cosby. Mr. Hinkle, before we let the callers on start talking about this, tell me what you think about it. There is a suspicion that celebrity does weigh pretty heavily in a courtroom.
I suppose in the courtroom it weighs heavily, but when you get down to the actual facts of the case, we had a very competent jury. All of us were very well educated, informed. We deliberated for 3 days. We did not have a problem with Bill Cosby being in the court. We took his testimony as best we could. Just the fact that he's a celebrity doesn't put him on a higher plateau.
Well, Mr. Hinkle, did the question arise among the jurors, just among themselves? Wait a minute, what could Cosby have done differently here that would have kept this thing from winding up in a federal courtroom in which a woman who may be his daughter may have to go to a federal prison for 12 years?
Well, he could have done things differently, but the fact that he had a educational trust set up for Autumn, he had a trust set up for her mother. He wasn't continuing Autumn's trust because she wasn't in school any longer. That was the whole basis of the trust fund. When he found out, he only found out in December of '96 that she had not been in school for 18 months. And that trust...
He's sounding more and more like a father, isn't he?
Not necessarily. Just because you set up a trust fund for someone doesn't make them...
No, but the fatherhood part is when you take it away.
No, remember, Bill Cosby was not directly involved in the trust. He had his lawyers working on the trust fund. When one of his lawyers called him to say that Autumn had called and had dropped out of school, he said that he will not renew the trust until he gets a chance to speak with Autumn. Once he spoke with Autumn and said, "Listen, Autumn, if you go back to school, I will again fund all your expenses for your education, including buying a used car." He did buy a used car for Autumn. But in court, he did testify that he had bought cars for other children that he was putting through college.
David, I hope you'll stay with us. It's another one of those breaks, but we're going to be back with a Cosby juror and your calls. Celebrity trials, our question of the day.
There's something new on cable. I'm Brian Williams. Join me each weeknight on MSNBC for the convenience of a primetime newscast on your schedule.
The situation is a little tense.
And join Tom, Katie, and Matt as they go one-on-one with today's newsmakers. The right questions, the real answers.
Children of the disabled grow up with a greater sensitivity.
Look for all of us on MSNBC, your 24-hour cable and internet news service.
MSNBC News, when you really want to know.
Welcome to Betty's Ocean View Diner. I'm Betty.
We work hard to make a good first impression. We gotta look our best all the time. If the waiters don't look clean, what are they gonna think about the kitchen? One waiter in a stained shirt, and forget it. Our food makes really tough stains. Before, with the detergents we tried, we couldn't get this grease out. But now, with this new Tide with bleach alternative, I can really see a difference.
It's gotta be clean. It's gotta be Tide. This is the best looking family on the block, and I'm proud of it. Thanks for coming.
To get a fresh mountain spring scent in your clothes, you could add mountain snow, wildflowers, or spring water to your wash. Or just wash them in new Mountain Spring Tide. The same great cleaning, now with a fresh mountain spring scent. Try new Mountain Spring Tide. Look for it along with regular Tide.
Of all the passions people possess, perhaps none is as intense as the passion for trading. And there's no better place to indulge it than at National Discount Brokers.
Oh, yeah!
National Discount Brokers, the broker for those with a passion for trading.
The painter Degas often lit his subjects with a glow from a window. Renoir used dappled sunshine. Toulouse-Lautrec, the flicker of gas lamps. But when leading museums need to light a Degas, a Renoir, or a Lautrec, they choose revolutionary GE halogen bulbs. These bulbs make any room look its best, whether it's home to a Renoir or something equally priceless.
Alan's asthma attack woke me. At 3 a.m., you don't try some unknown brand. You trust Primatene Mist.
It starts to open clogged breathing passages in as fast as 15 seconds.
We take asthma seriously with Primatene Mist.
Fastest type asthma relief without a prescription.
Tonight, internet journalism is about to get the recognition it deserves. Who will win the web's first Pulitzer Prize? On the site with Soledad O'Brien tonight at 7 Eastern on MSNBC.
Does your tissue leave you with a problem on your hands?
He blows his nose, he goes right through the tissue, and his hands get all wet.
And so's the ball.
And everyone else's hands.
That's why there's Puffs Advanced Extra Strength, the tissue that keeps hands cleaner and drier than regular tissue.
Dryer is definitely better.
Puffs Advanced is 60% thicker.
It's thicker. They really are soft. This should protect their hands.
And I'll protect the azaleas.
Protect them with Puffs Advanced Extra Strength. Soft as your touch, strong as your love.
The pitch. Smucker swings. Home run! You hit a home run every time, Richard? Yep, every time.
Growing up, both Tim and Richard Smucker thought big. Now they're the fourth generation of Smuckers making delicious jam.
Another home run!
No! Tim makes a great catch!
Wait! Tim drops it! Another home run!
Smuckers, celebrating 100 years of family-made goodness. With a name like Smuckers, it has to be good.
Welcome back to News Chat. Question of the day, celebrity trials, do stars get in jurors' eyes? I've been remiss in not going to the phone, but we've had David Hinkle, a juror in the Cosby trial, and David remains with us. But Ed in New York, do you have an answer to our question?
Yeah, I have some thoughts on the Carol O'Connor case. I think most people assume that they could more easily find themselves in Carol O'Connor's position than in Harry Persigian's position. But I think we need to realize that parents whose sons or daughters commit suicide very frequently...
You know, Ed, we're going to talk a whole lot about the Carol O'Connor case in a bit. Let me just switch you since you're on the phone. Do you think you can find yourself in Bill Cosby's position and how you would behave if someone who might be your daughter is asking for support, and would you run her off to the feds?
You know, I would probably look for some other way to handle it. Of course, I think what most people want to know is he or isn't he the father? And
Let's ask the juror. David Hinkle, did you guys want to know that?
Not at all. We were never instructed by the judge to consider the fact that she could or could not be his daughter.
Did you consider nullifying the law and saying it makes a difference?
But if let's for example say that she is his daughter, does that still give her the right to demand $40 million from her father?
Well, but does it give her father the right to kind of abandon her and make her an outcast?
Well,
and how would that affect her psychologically?
That's true, but also Bill Cosby did not go to the feds and tell the feds I want to have my daughter run in. It was a series of events that he instructed his lawyer to record the conversations.
David, no one may have informed you of this, so let me just ask Robert Gottlieb, sitting beside me, what is a deferred prosecution and how could it have come into play in the Cosby case?
Well, the U.S. attorney has discretion, even though technically a crime has been committed.
Doesn't have to prosecute.
They do not have to prosecute.
They can put it off for a year.
They can put it off for a year. Very often, it depends on the victim. If the victim goes to the U.S. attorney and say, listen, I may have been victimized, but it's okay.
David Hinkle, does it make any difference to you that the feds seemed anxious to prosecute this case? They could have put her on probation for a year.
We didn't
You didn't hear about
that.
David Hinkle is one of the jurors, been kind enough to join us. More of your calls. We're going to take a break, come back to our question of the day and some news. Stay with us.
The U.S. attorney. Tonight, Miami. It's hip, glamorous, and deadly. Why can't this beautiful city shake its ugly image? On the news with Brian Williams tonight.
Cosby extortion trial and the trial of Carol